next film is a good little bit of horror. Who doesn't love a good supernatural chiller kind of cabin in the woods kind of film? So this is Keeper. This is a new film from Osgood Perkins, aka Oz Perkins, and he's one of these people who, as soon as you start talking about, you're not sure how quickly to mention who he's the son of. He's the son of a famous actor from Psycho, Anthony Perkins, right? So he's kind of got a famous connection and link. So at the start of the film, we meet a couple. Liz, played by Tatiana Maslany, who was in She-Hulk in the Disney Plus show, and her boyfriend Malcolm, played by Rossif Sutherland. They are en route to a cabin in the woods at the start of the film, but this isn't just a wooden box in the middle of nowhere, right? This is essentially a glorified Center Parcs house, right? This is a very kind of big house with glass windows and loads of space. It's kind of like your dream house on Grand Designs, basically. And so, yeah, this house creaks a lot and makes a lot of noises when it shouldn't. It's a modern house, and it shouldn't be making the noises it should. And it's kind of shiningly new. The two of them are enjoying each other's company when Malcolm's very unlikable but wealthy cousin pops over for a visit as he lives in the building next to them. He's accompanied by his model girlfriend who doesn't speak English and she hates him, basically. He is an intrusive, creepy and controlling person, but he examines Liz and sort of approves of her and says she's a keeper. Now, Malcolm becomes more and more distant from Liz, and she becomes more and more uncomfortable in this house, and she starts to experience dreams and sort of sees things that aren't there, all while Malcolm is hiding certain things from her. But take a listen. I love playing horror clips on the radio on this show. It's one of my favourite things to do because it could sound like anything. It can sound completely crazy, energetic, and all the rest of it. But that's basically the film. It's creaky. It's got kind of chilling voices in, and there's whispers, all the rest of it. So I love horror clips. Are the best to play on radio. But I have to say that this is one of the most unnerving and unsettling films I've ever seen, and I loved it from a Shiversome perspective, because this film includes shots that always get under my skin and creep me out, and I found certain parts like alarmingly shocking. Some shots that are quick, but I found really kind of got to me and got under my skin. And this is what I want from horror and why I love horror, and this is why it's my joint favourite kind of genre alongside others. And even though this has had mixed reviews and it doesn't all work as well as it should, that doesn't take away from how well it was able to get under my skin, which is what I look for in this genre. And most stuff, I think, should look to this in terms of what you should be doing. And I wish it was able to follow through more than it does. But this is why I love horror. It's why it's one of my favourite genres. And this is what I wish most films would look to. Most mainstream horror films, I wish they would make me feel the way this does, and get to me and get under my skin the way this does. And and kind of some thought-provoking stuff and memorable stuff is what I want. So yeah, nothing bad ever happens in a cabin in the woods, right? That's kind of what we need to address here. So Oz Perkins is someone who many people would say is maybe the best horror director currently going, or their favourite currently going. But for me, the likes of Parker Finn, the Philip brothers and Zach Cregger are my favourite, but I'd say Perkins behind them. But for me, it would be those three. Obviously, Parker Finn did the Smile films, the Philip brothers did Bring Her Back and Talk to Me, and Zach Cregger has just done Weapons, which is a runaway success, which I couldn't be happy about. But I haven't gelled or kind of got with Osgood Perkins' work as much as I want to. And I remember being really nervous about Longlegs, which was his last film, which I remember people saying was the scariest film of the decade. And that is like a massive quote on the post that said the scariest film of the decade. And I went into that really, really nervous. I was like, oh, maybe I'm going to be really petrified or terrified by this. And it not only turned out not to be that, but not even as creepy as I wanted. I came away admiring what the film did, but kind of thinking I wanted more from that. But Keeper is the best thing he's done for me and my favourite of his so far, but it still unfortunately loses its way slightly towards the end. And I genuinely thought the horror and the scares in this was some of the best I've ever seen. And, I of course can't say that for everyone else, but for me, I loved how on edge and how much this got under my skin. I will say this is the most specifically framed horror film I've ever seen, right? And that's partly down to how claustrophobic and confined the setting is. And yes, you can say it's an artistic choice and kind of aesthetic choice, but it could also be down to the fact that they had no choice but to shoot it this way, because the building that the film is in, or the house, is a very big kind of wood and glass building, but even though it's big in size, it's still very narrow and cramped in and claustrophobic. So even though it's kind of quite tall and all the rest of it, it's still really enclosed and still really tight and stuff. And that's what you want from a horror. But yeah, there were a couple of jumps in this that got me a couple of times. I didn't leap out my skin, but it sent like a cold kind of jolt throughout my body, and it kind of sent like a shiver down my spine, which is good. But this mainly consists of things moving around in the background and shadows moving on walls, and the camera peering around corners as some things are happening. And there's one shot in particular in which sort of a shot in particular in which something is happening behind someone whilst they're on the phone, and I thought it was really nice and creepy. And there have been very few times when I've held my breath that much with a film, as you just see something slowly happening in the background and slowly getting progressively worse. And you're thinking, where's this going to go? What on earth is going to happen here? As the character's oblivious to what's going on and unaware. And you're like, anything could happen in the blink of an eye, and anything could happen. But it's one of those moments that's really nice and suspenseful and kind of gets to you in a really kind of strange way. But I'm like, that kind of set piece is what I love from horror. That kind of set piece is what I want for more films. And I'm glad at the vision that they had and kind of how they went for it, really. But this definitely requires more patience than some for horror film, in terms of it's not front and center with its chills and its scares. It's more implied. It's not like your Conjuring films or the Nun films or Insidious. It's more kind of in the background and more subtle. It's not like a kind of jumping out at you kind of film, even though there are scares. It's more of, we're going to like subtly imply sort of shadows moving in the background and creaks and kind of strange noises happening at night and during the day and that kind of thing. But I should say, coming out of this, I passed two girls who were also in the same film as being in this film. And as I was walking past them, one of them said to the other, maybe we should have picked a different film next time, or maybe we should have gone with a different film. And I have to admit, I did chuckle to myself as I understand why they said this. And even though I loved the horror and I loved the scares that this offered and provided, I couldn't help but go, I understand why you said that. And I understand where you're coming from that perspective. But it was quite a funny reaction, a funny kind of experience to have. I couldn't help but kind of chuckle to myself. But this is yet another reminder that you don't need jumps to unsettle the audience. But the issue, however, with the film, the main issue, is that it can't capitalize on much in the end. Yes, you've nailed the horror when it comes, and you've nailed the scares and the creeps and the kind of the shiversome moments. But when it comes time to give the reveal and the revelation to the audience, to kind of pull the rug out from under them, it felt like a slowly deflating balloon in terms of what it was doing. And I expected far more than what we actually get. I was expecting a much grander, much more dramatic kind of reason. But what we get is like, okay, I understand what you've gone for, but that's not quite as dramatic or quite as serious as I thought you'd go. And it was a little bit disappointing from that front, because I was like, we're leading up to something big and we're leading up to something kind of dramatic. But the alternative that you go for and the kind of it's not twist really, but the kind of the avenue that you take, I expected more from. And in a strange sense, right, it almost felt like the film itself didn't really care or couldn't be bothered with when it reveals its shocking moment, and it treated it too calmly for its own good. The moment where things are being revealed, the character delivering the dialogue is just kind of very relaxed about it, and he's very kind of, he almost doesn't care really. And I'm like, I'm kind of expecting more from you, but he's a character who's very unlikable. He's not a very nice person, so he's kind of delivering some very bad news to someone, and in the manner in which he's delivering it, he doesn't care. But that's his character. That's how his character acts. He doesn't care, and he's very just kind of, he shrugs it off really. And I suppose I expected more from it. But as with all horror, when it nears the end of the film, things go completely mad and crazy and completely off the wall. And up until now, people might have started to lose patience with the film. And whilst I was on board with it, and I was really loving what it was doing, to be honest, the ending and the sillier it gets, it might come across too silly for some people. And most horror films do get silly towards the end and do get kind of stupid. But I have a feeling here people really will just switch off and kind of turn off from it from the end, because I do think it does get silly, and I understand why people might not gel with the ending, and I do think it gets a bit too strange and silly for its own good. But for me, this is a 4-star film. I loved what the horror did. I love how it made me feel, which is what I care about most. This is what I want from horror. and I'm glad it got under my skin in a way that others didn't, and it knows how to creep me out and knows what kind of how to unsettle me. So let's keep it. It's a 4-star film for me, but it's in cinemas everywhere for you now to check out.